Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to this week's episode of The Couch Trip Therapy for Everyday Life. That's our subject matter expert, psychotherapist extraordinaire, Eddie Reece. My name's Billy Courtright, allegedly, supposedly the voice of the every person. And I think I'm well suited for our conversation today because, like many of us, I am a married man. I've been married to my wife for a considerable amount of time, since 2012. And we're doing pretty well. But the subject of our episode today is going to be beyond the honeymoon. So Eddie and I are going to talk a little bit about what happens to marriages. I'm sure we'll address the first 12 to 24 months, what we call the honeymoon period, and sunshine and rainbows. At least it was for me. But having now been married for, it'll be 14 years, April 28th. I'm personally as much in love with my wife today as I've ever been. The relationship is certainly different. We now have two kids, 12 and 9, and we've had our series of seasons and challenges and worked through some things, buried a parent and done some things that we just were never prepared to do. But so I would say that our marriage is pretty solid, but I would love to know from Eddie, kind of to the degree he's willing to share, like what is the life cycle of a marriage? What can we expect, or what might our listeners and viewers have experienced in that first chapter? And then how does that progress to the middle chapters? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's going to be some of us listening that aren't in the original marriage or have never been married, or maybe have been married more than twice. I don't know. But Eddie, as the title of the episode is Beyond the Honeymoon, talk to us a little bit about, what's going on through the dynamics of a relationship beyond that 6, 12, 18, 24 months when things, I'm going to use the term, get real.
Yeah. Well, my first thought was, this is any long-term romantic kind of relationship. Lots of folks don't get married, stay together for decades. I liked the word you used, the life cycle of it. A lot of couples come to therapy and there's some version of we've grown apart, or things are different. The underlying thought that would create the idea that you had grown apart is that you should stay the same. You haven't grown apart, you've just grown.
Grown. Yeah.
you know and it's different. So that's part of, I think, what would be an underlying issue with anything we might talk about in this realm, is that we get this idea in our head that we've met the right person. This person's just great for me, without any thought of who they will be or who you will be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Most of us have the idea that as of now, I am grown, meaning I don't have a lot more growing to do after this. And that is the way most of us feel at just about every age. 20-year-olds know it all. 15-year-olds know it all. They're grown. Obviously, they're not. So that would be the first kind of different way to think about this idea of a long-term relationship, is that who you are with today is not going to be exactly who you're with 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Think of your own life and what has changed in the last 5 years, the last 10 years of your life, the last 20 years of your life. And if you've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ahead of you with this person, you're not going to be the same two people. If nothing else changes, just aging changes you and you're different. So you're going to be married to an old person.
God willing.
So, yeah, if things go well, you're gonna be really old people,
Mhm.
married to each other. So, get rid of the idea that, you know, "I love you just the way you are," to quote Billy Joel.
Yeah.
"Don't change anything." Well, that's not gonna happen, and you wouldn't wanna be married to the same person if you got married when you were 25, when you're 50.
Right.
You don't wanna be married to that 25-year-old, so that's the first thing that kinda comes to mind is that you don't grow apart, you just grow. So
I gotta believe that the shared experiences that couples, uh, experience and endure and grow from, maybe, but they certainly have an effect. So whether you
mhm,
growth or accelerate or however it alters the trajectory of who you are as people,
right.
in my circumstance, there's an element of gratitude. Like, we've shared these experiences together, and there's a level of relatability and commonality and shared experience that brings us closer. But it's like we've changed together. Like, we've grown together, and not grown together meaning proximity,
Yeah.
but, like, we were on the same,
Yeah,
path.
you experience something together. You experience buying a house, having a child. You go through those experiences together. What really matters in terms of if you're hoping for a long-term relationship is when you go through those things, you go through them in a way that creates more closeness, more intimacy, a
Right,
tighter bond. What often happens is you go through the experiences together and you come out on the other side further apart because you see that experience differently, you react differently to it, and you aren't too happy with how your partner reacted or what they did or didn't do. And then to make things worse, you don't talk about it in a
right.
way that's helpful. You may not talk about it at all, or you may argue about it. It may become one of those things that quite often comes up in therapy. Once I get going with somebody, they will mention that experience that was 20, 25 years ago, and it still eats at them.
Right,
So if you grow apart, it's that you didn't go through your life together in a way that brings you closer.
right.
And
And I gotta believe that there are, forks in the road, and there are experiences where there's just no way to predetermine how it's gonna affect you or your partner, and in
yeah, well,
witnessing.
all of them. You
Right,
can't predetermine anything.
right, but we can have you can have a semblance of an idea. I was given the advice when I was, uh, engaged by a family member, like, "Have you traveled?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? Have you traveled anywhere?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, we've traveled. How did that go?" And I'm like, "No, it was great," and they said, "It's very important that you travel with your partner, because you can learn a lot, through travel, and because things don't go according to
mm,
plan, and you encounter fatigue and irritability, and, can you respect each other through that process, and can you deal with adversity and when things don't go according to plan," kind of like what we talked about last week. But, that was something that I remember kind of filing away, like, okay, you're gonna face experiences and adversity, and things aren't gonna go according to plan. And, how do you show up in those moments? And are you still
mhm,
respectful? Are you still enduring? Are you still, you know, by all accounts, a decent person, to your partner,
yeah.
or do you become
And
selfish?
if you don't go through it well, can you communicate in a way to where you can still build a closer relationship? The one of the things I'm fond of saying is that it's not if you're talking, "Well, I want a long-term relationship, I want one to last until one of us dies." Okay, well, the things that you have in common are great, but that's not going to sustain you for a long time. It's the differences that you have and how you navigate those differences that will sustain you. So, in terms of growth, you're better off if your trip doesn't go well between the two of you and you learn how to navigate those differences. I want to approach the trip this way. You want to approach it that way. I'm not going to change. You're not going to change. How do we navigate those differences in a way that we feel closer to each other, stay connected to each other instead of mad at each other because you're different from me and I don't want you to be different from me, which is what most arguments are really in
Mhm.
relationships is you're not me. You're not like me. You think this way, I think that way, and I don't like that, which is a really interesting phenomenon because what I'll say to couples when I point that out is that, okay, well, let's turn this person into you. You want to be married to them? You will know everything they're going to do, say, feel, think from now on. You know, that you're married to yourself. Why do you even need somebody else? You know, so we want somebody who's different from us, and we want to be able to navigate those differences with somebody that enhances our relationship, and that's really how we grow.
Mhm.
We grow from challenges. We grow from things that are tricky, difficult, and learning to navigate that in a way that works.
Yeah.
That's how we grow as people. That's how you grow as a couple, as a family. And so if you're growing apart, it's because that's not happening.
Right. It's gotta be, I mean, I'll phrase it as a question. Is it rewarding when you interact with a couple that, although struggling to communicate or struggling to make sense, they truly want the best, for the relationship? I gotta believe that just seems like it'd be a really cool place to be where you get to, kinda shepherd this couple back to a place where what they're looking for is a respectful, healthy, loving relationship, but they reach an impasse because of that growth,
Mhm.
and they're just kinda flummoxed a little bit. It would strike me as a very rewarding part of your profession to be able to kinda knit
Hmm.
that back together.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the whole big payoff for being a therapist is especially with the amount of stigma of coming to therapy in the first place that's in the South. People, by the time they get to my office, they've lost all hope and they really don't think that I'm gonna be able to help them. And sometimes within the first few minutes, they're going, "Oh, I should have talked to you 20 years ago." So yeah, to help people with something that feels so big to them that they don't think they're gonna be able to overcome it, and to walk them through the process of, "Hey, this really is not that complicated. Just do this and do that," and to see them, get through it, is incredibly rewarding. The probably most dramatic story was a couple. Well, the guy came in first and had been married for hours. It was really short. They had just gotten married, and he had, from his point of view, had just gotten her to move out because things were so bad right in the beginning, and he was saying he wanted a divorce, and I said, "Well, let's get her in here too, and have you guys lay out what's going on." She came in, she wanted a divorce. But there was something that I saw in them that made me say, "I tell you what, how about you guys give us 3 months and stop talking about divorce and let's work on this." And to shorten the story, several years later, they brought their firstborn to therapy and told me that they were so grateful because their child wouldn't exist
Right.
if they had not come to therapy. And so, you know, to how I might put it, that there's a human being. There's now several. I think they wound up having 3 children who exist because of the fact that they came into my office. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty rewarding. Um, so yeah, watching people go, oh, okay, never thought about it that way, and then they're different, you know.
I've heard it said, you gotta wanna make it work. Like, that saying. Is that true?
Yeah, well, everybody's ambivalent. If they may not present as ambivalent, and a lot of times that is the typical way people come in. One person wants to stay in and the other one wants out. But that's not really what's going on. Both people are ambivalent. They're just voicing the one side that they want to voice. There's psychological term for that is called projective identification. And, I have a part of me that wants to stay and a part of me that wants to leave. You have a part who wants to stay and leave. I feel more comfortable saying I want to stay. You feel more comfortable saying you want to leave. So I'll project my other part onto you. You'll play that role. You'll do the same thing with me. And our argument will be stay, go, stay, go, stay, go. But once I get people to actually start talking, they discover that, yeah, they really are kind of ambivalent. And the argument is just a way to stay away from the inner argument that they have. So they can blame the other person
Mm,
for the problems and for the eventual breakup if that happens, rather than saying, well, I was really ambivalent and I didn't really know what I wanted. That's not a place people are comfortable.
yeah. Well, certainly the opposite of ambivalence, would be passion or fire or,
No, it can be a false certainty,
okay.
which is what people are displaying. I know I want to make this work. I mean, I want to. No, no, you really don't.
Mm,
You do, but you also don't. You also hope it, falls apart, because you don't know. And, we've covered this in a number of different episodes, this idea that we're striving for certainty, and that's the problem.
yeah.
I want people to sit in their ambivalence, this ambivalence of we've grown apart. I don't know what I want. I want folks to sit in that and explore that rather than saying growing apart or being ambivalent is the problem to solve. No, that's not the problem to solve. That's how you're going to grow is by diving into that. Going, wow, this is interesting. I don't know if I want to be with you or not. Part of me really does. Part of me doesn't. Part of me doesn't care. And part of me really cares. And then explore that.
Yeah.
Um, that's how you grow. And you'll also come to a better decision, whatever that decision might be, because now you know a whole lot more about who you are and what you really want.
Yeah. I've also heard it, recommended that engaged couples attend couples therapy.
Oh, it's too
Uh,
late by then. An engaged couple will come into to therapy and we want to do premarital counseling. I go, how far along in the engagement are you? You got the invitations all sent out? Oh, yeah. So and I go, well, I'm not going to be able to help you as much as I would like to because the train's already left the station. And if we did counseling that was about should we marry each other, that would have had to have started after your second or third date to really be successful. Right now, the forces are against us for you guys to come across anything that might indicate you might not should marry each other. You're not going to want that at all. There's a lot I can help you with in terms of how do you talk about things when they don't go well, stuff like that, and help you with your communication. I can throw out some things for you to discuss that you probably haven't discussed yet, like your finances. Do you guys happen to know how much money each of you have, each debt you have, credit cards, financial goals? Have you talked about? No. Okay. Well, that would be a good one. We could talk about that. Yeah. So premarital that you're engaged, you you can certainly get a lot of help, and if nothing else, you can establish that therapy is helpful.
Yeah,
So when you get to that point that pretty much every couple I've ever known, professionally or non-professionally, gets to going, "Well, what made me think I really wanted to marry this person?" When you get to that stage, then you've got a place to go, and you know that therapy can be helpful, and that is worth its weight right there.
I agree. I think and again, from the personal experience of having heard and witnessed it being recommended to an engaged couple, and I think that there was a nobility in the person who was recommending it, not thinking that the train has left the station, but just understanding like, hey, things are going to happen that you're not going to have
Mhm.
the recipe for, or the blueprint or the instructions. And to your point earlier, removing the stigma beforehand, and just know that, hey, you're likely going to encounter things along the way that are gonna, from my personal experience, rock you to the core, and
Mhm.
you're just not gonna
Yeah,
you're not gonna have a way forward with any level of confidence, and it's
right.
scary.
Yeah, well, because nobody teaches us any of that. I mean,
Right.
there's not a class in school about how to have a long-term romantic relationship. And how do you do that? How do you navigate these differences? How do you even communicate with anybody that you disagree with? There's not a lot of training with that. The training that we get, and we've talked about this in podcasts before about romantic relationships, most of it's wrong. That, oh, you somehow you're magically going to meet the right person and you'll somehow know it. And you'll realize it and you'll get married and live happily ever after. That's the training we get. And it's still pretty much 50% of marriages end in divorce and the other 50% end in death. So,
Right.
the odds are stacked against you. uh
Yeah. I'm
So,
reminded there's throughout social media, I'm sure everyone listening or viewing this has come across an article, usually poking fun at or comical in nature, whether it was written in the 50s or 60s. I can think of one. I think it was Better Homes and Gardens or McCall's or something, and it
mm,
was like instructions to a woman of how to care for your husband, and it kind of talked
mhm,
about like how to make yourself up and how to prepare the house and how to
right.
have dinner ready and how to treat him when he comes home. And it's so foreign, in 2026 to think that this is how women got their instruction or advice,
Mhm,
50 or 60 years ago. Um, but it is, and there was a
right.
sense that there was a decorum, and there was a path that could be traveled, and then clearly women said, "Well, screw this." I mean, like, I have a life,
Yeah.
I have an identity.
And yeah, and if you think about it, that was cutting edge technology. And I always bring this back to medicine, any era is cutting edge technology in
Oh, yeah.
medicine. So leeches, bloodletting. And so today, right now, what we're learning, what we're being taught, what we think is true or successful, a lot of it's going to be wrong. And it's difficult to be able to ferret that out because you couldn't see it in the 50s, when you were reading those articles. You didn't go, well, that doesn't seem right because I'm my own person. I don't have to be subservient. There wasn't a lot of that around. So keep in mind, I mean, I can't say with any certainty that the advice I'm giving people is right on. I've seen it work, but things will be different 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So will it work then? Maybe not.
Well, philosophically, though, I think you certainly have a perspective, around kindness, compassion, curiosity, communication. I mean, I can't. I mean, those seem to be pretty center to who you are. I don't know
Yeah,
how
and
much of that's
and
going to change.
yeah, the kindness, curiosity, the compassion part of it is been around for, you know, recorded history. Most religions taught that, most philosophies teach that. So pretty tried and true stuff there. How you implement it, how you think about it, how you incorporate it into your life can be really different now.
Hmm.
How do you do it with today's technology as compared to 20, 30, 40 years ago? How
Right.
do you do it?
Yeah.
Mm,
Everything's different now. I mean, so much
yeah,
of whether your individual lives, your married lives, your family lives, so much of it is what's fit to print, what's fit to publish, what's fit to
mhm,
share. Again, the masks we wear, the personas we amplify, whether they're true or not, I think drives a lot of, I said to you off air, we have an interesting circumstance within my wife and I, where, when we moved to Georgia back in 17 and met with married couples, and had friends that were married couples, a lot of those married couples are no longer married. And,
mhm,
so much of our friend circle and our family couple circle has changed.
right,
And, I get a little anxious, about, as the friends, like in our particular relationship, I've lost touch with a lot of guys who I liked a lot,
mhm.
but, my wife is still very close with the women, and it's like, no one ever taught me how to navigate that, and
Yeah, and you're also working with that underlying belief that things shouldn't change. If you know for a fact that things change and things are gonna be different, it's not a surprise, it's not, out of the norm for all these folks to be divorced. It's not out of the norm for you to lose touch with people, because that's part of what happens in life. We change, they change, circumstances change. So it's always changing. And the nervousness that I hear from you is the nervousness of, well, if those things change, what if I change? What if we change? Well, you're going to. You're gonna change. And so again, you're working from that basic belief that it's supposed to stay the same. Just the idea that the ultimate goal is to be married to somebody, be committed to somebody until one of you dies. that's a lot of wishful thinking. Because especially if you marry in your 20s, because goodness gracious, you're going to change a great deal. And so it might be a better idea to have the notion that we get together, we decide to make a legal commitment to each other with no expectations that it's going to last forever. I think it would be an interesting experiment to marry for 3 to 5 year contracts, and you write out the contract that way. And you got to understand that we all sign a prenup agreement. It's generally that the state wrote it. That's how you get a marriage license. You sign a prenup agreement which says if you divorce, this is what happens. So go ahead and write your own. Write up a contract for 3 to 5 years. And how different might your relationship be as you move through that 3 year period? Okay. You gotta re-up, do you want to? Yeah. I think you might be on a little better behavior,
Yeah.
if you wanna re-up and, you're gonna play your best. I mean, if you're a major league pitcher and your contract's coming up, you wanna throw as well as you can, so you can
Yeah.
get the most out of the next contract. And do it that way. Keep you from falling into what a lot of couples fall into, which is a good deal of complacency.
Yeah.
It's I don't even believe you love me anymore. Well, of course I love you. I married you, didn't I? And
Yeah.
so it was like that really says I did this thing on that particular day and now I don't have to do it anymore.
It's interesting because, like, marriage and a contract, you're using an athletic analogy, could be the title of a book. But,
The
it's funny because,
athletic marriage.
but
Mm.
it's interesting. Like when you said that, I thought to myself, I'm like, well, my wife could certainly bolt whenever she wanted. Like I don't take for
Yeah.
granted the fact that we're married.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm entitled to any behavior that I choose. I don't. I guess there are people out there that certainly think that they're
Oh,
somehow married, so
yeah.
therefore game over. But
Feeling taken for granted and taking people for granted is incredibly common. Most of the time, we have no idea we're doing it. It's routine. And we've talked about that in podcasts, the importance of routine. Not so much importance, just the fact that we're routine based people. And if you go through the same routine with the same person over and over and over and over, it would be really easy to feel taken for granted and to take for granted that they're going to be there. They're going to do this. They're going to do that, which goes back to that idea that things don't change. No, the people are going to change. That's the way that they're behaving now, the things that they do now, they might not do. They might not be that way at some point, and you're not gonna be that way.
yeah, 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 it's funny. This is a couple times now in our conversation you've brought change, and I think of another colloquialism or saying or whatever, which is women marry men hoping they'll change, and men marry women hoping they won't. And
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it's yeah, it's a little trite, but we all marry people hoping they will turn into the people we want. That's typically what it is. I tell people that an honest wedding vow would be I vow to do everything in my power to turn you into who I want you to be, and I vow just as strongly to resist any and every attempt you make to turn me into anything else other than what I want to be. That would be a little more honest wedding vow because that's what most people do. That's what most arguments are about. You are not the person I want you to be, and actually be more technically correct, am demanding that you be. So we don't give people the room to change. We don't give people the room to be who they are, even though we don't like that, which a long-term relationship has to have an element of that in it. And most of us have that with any friend that we've had for decades. There's things about those people that are good friends that we don't particularly like, but that doesn't stop us from being good friends. And it should be the same way in a long-term romantic relationship. There are it's not there's going to be. There are things about that person you don't like. And if you had the power to change it and everybody in the world, including them, was okay that it changed, you'd vote for that. So we do want people to be different.
I I think there's I'm going to use these words. I don't know how it's going to grab you, but I think there's permissible or expected evolution. But when you think of like values,
Well, let's go with permissible. Who put you in charge to give permissions? That underlying belief is one of ownership, and this is a whole nother thing. Your romantic relationships are very different from your platonic relationships for one reason. There is a sense of ownership in the romantic relationship that is not in the friendship.
oh, says you.
No, yeah, well, says any couple you
Commitment's not
look at.
ownership.
Yes, it is. And that's the way we treat people. Why is what I'm doing so upsetting? Well, because we're married. You know? I don't want a husband that does that. I don't want a wife that does that. I don't want a partner that acts that way. Well, your friends act worse than that, you know? Well, they're my friends, you know? And this idea of ownership is not only in romantic relationships, it cuts across all sorts of things. It's in our language. I was talking to my accountant. They're not your accountant. My baseball team. That's not your baseball team, you know?
Semantics, though, isn't it?
It's very important semantics because if we say mine so much, that was who was that? The ducks or geese, some birds in Ice Age. Mine, 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 mine.
Right. Ring,
Uh,
ring, ring. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
we then feel what's the word? I'm blanking on the word. Privilege, not privilege, but it's okay for us to be demanding of how the other behaves because you're married to me. That's, no.
Well, I don't think that's fair. I mean, I don't. I mean, I think the intent matters. I mean, I've countless. If every time I said my wife, that was somehow a mischaracterization,
Yeah,
it would be ridiculous.
the woman who I was fortunate enough to marry.
Okay, well, I can promise you that's not how I introduce her.
I know.
Um,
Well, let me try that.
I
It
will, and
it's a
I see.
very different neurological experience
Granted,
to say my wife because neurologically that says I own her. And if I own her, then I can make certain demands of her. And
I'm
we
uncomfortable
do
even
that.
hearing that because, like, I don't ever want
Ah,
to be
well,
perceived by my wife.
you see, you don't want to be perceived. You want to be that way, but
No,
you
not
don't want to
really.
be perceived that way
No,
because we all want to be that way. We all
well,
want
that's
to
not fair.
change the people that we're deeply involved with. We want them to be different. And that I think is really important to admit and live with, because it gives you a good starting point as to why I feel like we've grown apart. I think we've grown apart because you're not behaving the way I want you to behave. And I think I have the right to get you to behave that way because I own you. I mean, that's where that comes from, in my
I get it.
opinion,
I can see it.
rather than, "Wow, this is really interesting. You act this way, and it's really interesting to me that I would be married to somebody who acts that way because I wouldn't have thought that, before." And, I wonder how we're gonna be able to incorporate that into our relationship. How am I gonna, rearrange my way of being and thinking to where that's not so irritating to me or not causing me to think that I don't know if I should be married to you or not, because there's also another kind of thing that most of us carry around with us in our relationships, that if we're different, we can't be married, and it's like, well, you're going to be nothing but different. And if there's a big difference, I don't think we could be married, well, maybe, maybe not, but you've got to explore that rather than kind of following this all or nothing sort of way of looking at how you're supposed to be and how they're supposed to be. Um, Otherwise, you're going to grow apart
Yeah,
because you're just going to argue and be upset that they won't be the person you want them to be.
fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I can relate. No doubt about it. And as I sit here, I mean, I'm always trying to demonstrate behaviorally what I actually feel inside, which is grateful. Like I'm not saying I'm every guy. I'm not saying I'm you or I'm
Mhm.
most married guys, but like for me personally, it's important. Like I will adopt on occasion, likely because I'll likely slip at times, but I will adopt the woman I'm fortunate enough to be married to. I think that sounds wonderful.
Mhm.
And it would likely put a smile on my wife's face. My
Mhm.
wife, see, like there I did it again, but it's not like I'm not doing it with some intent of your mind, like
Mhm.
some Cro-Magnon type,
Well, I
evolutionary.
don't, I don't, I don't, I don't mean it's to that degree. I'm just saying it's there enough that it supports all of these other things.
Potentially.
That I can be demanding of you. I can say that you must behave this way
Well, I can promise you that's not gonna work.
because you're my wife. Well, I can promise you it won't work either, but we still do it, you know.
Indirectly, I think.
If you're mad at your partner, it's because they're not behaving the way you want them to. That it's always that simple.
Typically, when I'm angry, it's because, in my opinion, I know I'm probably not behaving very well, and I feel bad about it.
If you're mad at her,
I don't get mad at her. Like, I really don't. Like, I get angry, but I get angry at the
wait,
circumstance.
no, you're
My
mad
wife
at her.
what do you I mean, how can you get I mean, I guess if there's a if to harken back to our last conversation, if I was
Uh,
attached to a specific outcome, I could see
mhm.
myself being disappointed. But I'm being as honest as I can be.
Call it whatever you want. It's you're not behaving the way I want you to behave. That's the only reason, in my opinion, any of us are ever irritated about anything. The world is not behaving according to
Correct.
the
There's
way
definitely an
I want it
expectation,
to
yes. Yes.
behave.
Right.
Otherwise, somebody cuts you off in traffic, it's not because they cut you off in traffic, it's because they're not driving the way you believe they should drive around you.
Yeah. I
Um,
can buy that.
so it's the same thing if your partner does something and you get like that, it's because they're not behaving the way you think they should behave.
Fair enough. Let me bring this back to something I think is at the root of, uh, in my view, this topic, which you've mentioned a couple things that I want to get clarification on because both in my business and in my personal life, as a father, as a friend, I'm very aware of values. I'm very aware of what I would consider to be kind of uncompromisables, where this is like, this is
Mhm.
what makes me me. And I would be, I just can't imagine a scenario in which my values would change as I age. But is it possible? Can people change on that level?
Oh, sure. Growing up in the South, and I just had a conversation with the guy that was out working on my lawn. That this was mentioned that what the South was like. He had just moved here, and how it's changed. And I think of the racial issues that were the way they were when I was a kid. I mean, yeah, values change. There aren't white only, colored only water fountains anymore. So sure, values can change.
Do you
The
think they're
deeply
changed by
held
the person who put
beliefs.
the white only sign on?
Somebody who was in charge of that had to change enough
Hmm.
to make it
I think
happen.
there's a lot of
And
black folks
and
out there that would challenge that.
well, I didn't say and change and become perfect. But it changed enough, and even talk in my conversations with John Lewis. I mean, he said the same thing. Things are really different, and things are much better than they were. Sure, they are. They absolutely are. Does that mean they're great? No. Does it mean they're even good in some instances? No. Does it mean that it's still horrible in some instances? Sure. Right. But yeah, your values can change and will change as you grow. When I was 16, I valued my car, you know, then now, not that big of a deal.
Right.
It's a small part of my life,
Those aren't the kind of values I'm talking about.
Well, here's where I want to go. Not only can they change, I hope that most of us could learn to not, you don't have to constantly, but at least from time to time, question those values and look at those, because the more you believe this is the right only way with some things can cause you to not explore the other parts of yourself. Go back to what we were saying earlier. A couple comes in and one person's arguing, I want to make this work. The other one's arguing, I want to get out. You aren't exploring all the other parts of yourself in that instance. So if you say, well, I value honesty, you know, you're not going to explore all the different ways you lie. And I guarantee you lie. But if you have this image of, I am an honest person, and you are doing that in a way to where it's always, forever, no way in the world am I ever dishonest in any way, shape, or form, then you're not exploring that. So, what does honesty mean to you? Honest in what way? Honest about what things? What ways are you not honest? What things are you not honest about? And we're all not honest about a whole lot of things that have to do with our own selves, because we don't even know they're there until somebody helps us find them. So that's why I'm sort of bristling at your values, anybody's values. Great to have values. Explore them
Mhm.
and explore what they really are. Kind of like when people talk about writing a dating profile. Let me take a look at your profile. Oh, I want somebody attractive and honest and successful. Okay, are there people putting, I want ugly, dishonest, losers? No, so you're not really saying anything. Attractive in what way? Looks like what? Honest in what way? Successful in what way? Um, you've gotta get really, really specific with pretty much everything that runs through your brain in order to know yourself as well as you can know yourself. And so
No,
that's
no, that's
that's
fair.
that's what that's about.
No, I get it. I get it. Yeah, I think I don't think we're disagreeing. But as we get into this final 15 minutes or so, in your experience, would you say that there are some characteristics or traits or things that you're able to witness, or encourage or develop in couples that is more prevalent in the couples that make it?
Well, the couples that make it long term and to just that, they make it. Oh, the other people didn't make it. Why do we have this thing about here is the ultimate goal to be married until you die? I mean that no, the ultimate goal should be to have the best relationship you can have in terms of how you grow and develop as a person and a person in relationship. And your best outcome may be the romantic boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, boyfriend, boyfriend part of it, whatever it is, it may be the best outcome is that comes to an end. That would be a successful relationship, especially if you can realize that and bring it to an end in a way that is kind and compassionate.
But that
So,
wasn't the question.
yeah, I know, but I'm a stickler for those sorts of things because again, it's exploring what's underneath that we
Agreed.
and come up with the couples who make it rather than there are couples who do stay together until one of them die. What would be some of the differences between those couples and the couples that don't stay together? See, there's not a judgment about good, bad, right, or wrong. That's how we get so brainwashed is in our language, the
Fair
language of
point.
ownership. So the couples that stay together longer or until one of them die and are satisfied. See, that's even another point because 50% of marriages, because most people don't study long-term relationships that are marriages for some reason. Um, the vast majority of those 50% aren't what you would call really satisfied with their marriage. So you've got to look at couples who have stayed together and are really satisfied. What's different? The difference is that they've learned to navigate those differences. They've learned to release themselves from this sense of ownership that my partner needs to be a certain way, act a certain way. They need to treat me this way, that way. You let those sorts of things go and you stay curious, kind of compassionate about this person. I want to know who you really are and stop thinking that this is who you are, so this is who you will always be, and to actively explore how you and your partner are changing in a relationship. That's rarely a topic of conversation. And how your ideas and things you like and don't like change, and to share those sorts of things and explore those things with each other. So the sense of real satisfaction, I think, comes from here is a person who I can stay curious about. I feel kindly toward, who is fascinating in some way to me. Um, holds my attention, who shows up, that we do share enough in terms of our own values that we want to stay together. And it's it's almost one of those Zen things. If you really want to stay with somebody until one of you dies, you have to not make that the goal. Because as soon as you make that the goal, then you start seeing things that need to be explored that you're going to push away because if you explored it, it might mean you aren't going to meet your goal. That's why premarital counseling with an engaged couple is not going to be as effective because they've already set their goal. We're going to be married till one of us dies, and I don't want to know anything that's going to take me away from that goal. That shouldn't be your goal.
Well, I'm going to tell you my opinion on this, and you may not like it, but I'm going to say it anyway.
I'm not going to dislike it.
Well,
I'm just
as I
going
said
to
said
sort
to
of
you,
agree with. I'm
my
going to pick it
goal,
apart or not.
my goal, the goal I own, my goal is to be chosen. It's to continue to have Danielle choose me day in and day out, month in and month out,
man,
year
boy,
out.
there's
And
years of therapy there, man.
probably,
Yeah, because
but again, it elicits a certain.
your goal should be going that way.
That's the way I'm going.
No, 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 no. You're saying my goal is for me to be chosen.
Well, I have to behave in a manner that would be so.
Well, yeah, which is where I would say a lot of the problems would come from. Because
Assuming we have them.
love is something you can only give. Right? Being chosen is something you can only do. And if you do anything to be loved, to be chosen, to be picked, to be the most important person, however somebody's going to say that, if you're doing things in order for it to come this way, you're not being loving. You're being controlling, manipulative, codependent because love is a gift. I give it to you with no regards to what you do with it. So if I give you a gift of $100, you can go blow it on the worst thing I would choose for you to blow it on. And I don't say anything about that because it was a gift. You can do what you want with it. And there's no sense of I'm going to love you so that you will love me. No, that's not love. That's a contract. That's not a gift. And boy, that is a central piece of why so many relationships don't work well is because we're there to get love, not give love. And you cannot get love. You can't. There's no way. And boy, I've explored this for decades to try to figure out how the logic works. That somehow there must be something about getting love. I want to be loved. Sure, wanting to be loved is wonderful. Don't do anything to get somebody to love you, though, because it won't be love. It will be a transaction. Go be the most loving person you can be in that true sense of a gift. And that is really what you want. It's not getting love. That's not what you really want, although it seems to be. Go out and, you hear the stories of, when I started volunteering, when I went and did something for other people, then, I found what I really wanted to do. It's being of service. But doing it without that sense of what am I going to get back? You're only going to get the feelings that you get when you do that.
That was brilliant. Truer words have never been spoken. Serve, love, encourage, give, give.
Yeah.
Let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah.
That was a perfect and very eloquent, I might add. And I choose you, Eddie. There's no other podcast partner out there for me. I choose you. But
You
this
can
was
have as many podcast partners as you
nope.
want. I
I am
hope they're all
monogamous. I am
successful.
not poly. I am monogamous in the podcast world, ladies and gentlemen. This has been another awesome episode, in my opinion, of the Couch Trip Therapy for Everyday Life with Eddie Reece and Billy Courtright. The subject of Beyond the Honeymoon was brought to you this week for a little over an hour, and I hope you enjoyed it. Eddie, final words before we tap out.
If you want something, go give it.
Love it. Put it on a t-shirt, Eddie. We're gonna be rich. Talk to you folks. Bye for now.
Bye.